We've just come up from Charles Cross Police Station where Charles Fort stood. We are now at a spot where Old Town Street ends and Tavistock Road begins behind me, going north. In between these two areas, these two streets, was another gate called Old Town Gate, named after Old Town Street.
And that one, Phil, was where?
In this area, we don't know exactly. There's
Somewhere
a map
around here.
Yes, there's a plaque to it over there, but that's been moved since the old days. But if you stood here, it makes sense that it was right here because Old Town Street is behind us to the south and Tavistock Road is to the north. If you were here in those days, you'd be looking up at a very steep hill because North Hill was very much steeper in those days and higher before they chopped it off to fill in Nipson Creek and parts of Stonehouse Creek. So that, if you looked up here in those days in late 1642, you would see an earthwork going up on the left, which was the keystone of Plymouth's defences, the outer line, called the Magdalen Fort, named after the Magdalen Ridge that ran across what is now Mutley Plain. Now, Old Town Gate stood here. There was a ditch because there's references to it throughout the Civil War where people were paid to clean out the ditch. So it was obviously used in 4 years as a rubbish tip. An earth wall ran out from either side of it, and there was a drawbridge because this drawbridge was a very busy piece of wood that was used day in, day out, and that had to be repaired several times during the Civil War.
Because it was the main link between the town and up the hill,
the outer forts,
going on to the outer forts and further away from
further
Plymouth.
afield. Yes,
right.
It's the main road out. It's the Tavistock Road.
Tavistock Road, yes.
Traders used it for years, and now soldiers were using it all the time. There was, like I said, there was a drawbridge. There's references to that, and a lot of the soldiers that were used for the forts were sent up this road and brought back. Bodies were brought back. Wounded men were brought down. There is a reference to a man called Smith, who was decapitated in January 1645, and his wife was on her way up to bring him food with her servant, and as she went up the hill, she saw a horse coming back with a body slumped over it, and it was her husband. And there was a man called Richard Smith buried in St Andrews in January 1645, so this could be a true story. Not 100%, but it's more than likely.
So in a sense then, the road up to Mutley here was a military road.
It was used by the military. It was a road there before, but it wasn't carved out specially. But it must have been very slippery in the old days. I mean, there's a reference to a cannon being taken, a saker, taken from the shore, the foreshore of Plymouth, brought up this way through Old Town Gate, taken up to Magdalen, and placed on a platform beside the fort. And it said they must have used about 16 oxen to drag that up there.
What you mean is Plymouth High School for Girls, don't you?
That's right, Plymouth High School for Girls.
Is on the site of
the Magdalen Fort. Fort Magdalen, yeah.
So could we perhaps say that Ebrington Street was also a military road?
Could be, because that went, although it didn't exist at the time, it might have been carved out because it's behind the forts, and to supply forts you need some kind of road for wagons and stuff, and you often read about using the Barbican boats bringing in stone, because in July 1643 the town council decided to stone face the forts. Resolution, Charles Fort, Terror Fort, all the forts. St George's Fort, which ran down to my left, that was the western fort on the inner town line, as it was called.
Where are we looking
down towards the town.
Where, can you give me an idea whereabouts in the town?
I'd say where Armada Way joins Cornwall Street, in that area, down that way, or Mayflower Street. There is no sort of...
That way, sort of behind the money centre.
So all these forts were stone-faced. That's why you see stone on Resolution Fort. But until July 1643, they never were stone-faced. And you read about stone being brought up by boat to the Friary Quay and brought up to the forts. So this inner line were stone-faced. And there's an incident, there's a funny little story where, well, it's not funny, a widow's house that stood near Old Town Gate in the Civil War was used to store ammunition and ordnance and powder for the soldiers in this area, or it could be for the outer line. And she was paid a compensation for the army to use her house to store ammunition and powder.
So in the days of the Civil War, we're standing on a pretty busy spot.
Oh, very busy. This was probably the busiest spot. Here was the busiest spot. Up and down. From Magdalen, you went right and left to the other forts along the outer line, Lipsam Fort, Holywell, and to the left towards Pennycombe Quick.
So what you mean, Phil, is from Magdalen Fort, you could go left to North Road, east,
West.
west,
East and west.
east and west.
Yeah.
And on the right side, you're going towards
Hillcrest.
Lipson, Hillcrest,
Mount Gould Road.
Mount Gould Road, going towards Lipson.
Yeah, so this was the main artery for troops coming up, reinforcements. In some of the battles that the Royalists started to overrun several of the forts in the later years, troops were rushed up this hill and taken from other forts. So this was a busy piece of real estate in the Civil War.
The thing is, Phil, in Plymouth history, you cannot escape the word military.
No, we've got a great military past.
Shaped Plymouth.
That's right, it did for centuries. And now it's all forgotten.
It is indeed.
It's all buried. Yes, it's
and
sad.
locked away.
Locked away, not many people interested, which is
Indeed.
especially the ones in charge of the town.
Thank you very much, Phil.
My
Thank
pleasure.
You. Thank you.